we are, my friend?
Yes, sir. Talking Sopranos podcast, first episode.
Steve Schirripa, you know me as Bobby Bacala.
Michael Imperioli, I played Christopher Moltisanti on The Sopranos, and this is being recorded March 30th, and we're in the midst of the coronavirus crisis, and we were planning this podcast before all this happened, and then when it did happen, we were going to cancel recording this because we did not feel like doing it, and for other reasons that people are sheltering in place and all that stuff. We just want to say we're aware that there's a lot of suffering right now. Everybody knows someone who's sick pretty much. Steve and I had a mutual friend who passed away a few days ago. It's a terrible, terrible crisis. But then we started getting a lot of communication from our fans, particularly through social media, and they were asking for the podcast. They felt they were watching the show, binging the show during, shelter in place and quarantine, and they were telling us they really wanted the podcast, and we decided to figure out a way to do it while we're in our house.
So Michael's in California. I'm in New York City. At first, we've been working on this over 6 months, the podcast, the rewatch. And we will go through from episode 1, and we will go through all 86 and then some. And at first, as we spoke about, and I still feel like crap, like the rest of the country, the rest of the world.
Of course. We're depressed. Like everybody.
And anxious and worried for our families. We're all in the same boat as everybody else. And so I said to myself, Maya, is this really important? Is a TV show important with what's going on now? And for some people it is, some people it's not. And if we could give you a moment of joy, I guess that's what we're doing. And we're both. I'm in the house 23 hours a day. I know people having a lot worse than I do. Listen, we'll do it for the fans. We'll do it for ourselves, and we'll see what happens. I haven't watched
this also was meant to be. We were meant to be together in a studio.
So it's not the ideal thing here, but
it's not the ideal. We were going to have on our second episode Edie Falco as a guest, and that's not going to happen.
Which we will have.
We will eventually.
As this goes on, we'll have a lot of guests, and this too shall pass.
This too shall pass.
And we will have a lot of guest cast members and location people and crew and production people and producers and writers. At some point, we'll have a whole lot of guests, hopefully sooner than later, But for now, we're in our homes. I watched the episodes. I just started. I watched a couple, and I haven't seen these things since it came out.
Neither have I. I haven't watched any of them since the initial airings, really.
So I came on the second episode of the second season. I watched the show. Everyone was talking about it, and it aired, in 99, the first hit the air.
I think January 99, yeah.
So take me back, because I wasn't there. So take me back. You are an actor in New York. You're 32 years old?
31.
31 years old. Tell me what happened. You get the call from your agent. What's happening? How did you wind up where you are?
Yeah. Well, I really have to give credit to the casting directors. That's Sheila Jaffe and Georgianne Walken.
Who's Christopher Walken's wife?
Georgianne married to Christopher, and Sheila and Georgianne were, champions of mine, advocates for me for a lot of projects, and they always had me in, and we became friends. And so anything I'd be remotely right for, they'd bring me in. And they said, there's this series casting for HBO. Come in and meet the director, writer. And there was no real series at the time on HBO. It was a very new thing.
I think they had Sex in the City?
No. Not on the. I think maybe Arliss.
Oh,
maybe
Robert Wall.
Yeah, if you Robert Wall. I don't know if it was on the air or whatever. So, and I read the script. I liked the script. I can't say I was blown away or knocked my socks off because, I had never done a series before. I had
Well,
made a living.
where were you in your career? So tell me, where were you at this point?
I had done a lot of movies. I've been making a living doing movies mostly. Yeah, mostly independent movies and theater.
Well, you're paying the bills. You're paying the rent.
Paying the bills. I had just done a big Hollywood movie the year before with Walter Hill and Chris Walken and Bruce Willis called Last Man Standing. And I had just done the lead in an independent movie, a couple of leads, two independent movies. But, the idea of a series, you read one script and you sign on for maybe 100 scripts. I had never done that before. I read a script. Do I want to do it? Do I not? So, and from the pilot script, it's not easy to get the tone completely. Like, it's very funny. I wasn't sure if it was a spoof or where it was going. I didn't know David. I didn't know David Chase, the creator and writer. I didn't know his work. But I did like some of the actors they were talking about, like Edie Falco, who I knew, Tony Sirico, who I knew, Vinny Pastore, who I knew, Lorraine, who I knew a bit from Goodfellas.
And Lorraine was the only star at this point.
Lorraine was the only star.
Person. She was
the only
star.
Name. Yeah.
She was nominated for Goodfellas.
She was nominated, so she was the only star.
Awards, so she was
a lot of the other people were working actors. Like Jim, I didn't know. Gandolfini, I did not know. He did have a good reputation. I saw him in a play, maybe 2 years before. He did. They did a play On the Waterfront, and that play adaptation. Bud Schulberg actually adapted the screenplay, his own screenplay for a theater production on Broadway. It was kind of a bomb. It was a big budget flop, pretty much. My friend Ron Eldard, who I had just done a play with, was the lead. Played, and I think it was Penelope Ann Miller played the Eva Marie Saint role.
So you saw Jim, but you didn't know him.
Jim played the wise guy in On the Waterfront. Johnny Friendly, I think his name was, something like that. But Jim had a good reputation. So I went and auditioned, and I auditioned for David. My Christopher Moltisante's name in the original pilot script was Dean Moltisante.
Dean Moltisante.
Which never really, that wouldn't have worked as well.
No. Nothing would have worked except for what worked. You know what I mean? Nobody else cast would have worked. What it is what it should have been. But let me ask you, was Moltisanti one of David Chase's cousins or family members? Because he did use a lot of the last names in the show were relatives of his.
Like I don't know that.
Yeah, he had cousins named Bucco and certain other cousins. Certain names he used his family's names were names of characters, for sure.
Right. I did the same thing when I started writing on the show later on. I used some names from family and growing up and stuff like that.
Okay, so you go in, your agent calls you, you read the script, you go in. You already did Goodfellas.
Yeah, but that was like 8 years before.
And you were Spider. Not a huge role, but a very memorable role.
Yeah, I mean, in the business, everybody knew who I was. People on the street or wherever sometimes would recognize me.
And then you had to go back to waiting tables. Am I correct?
After Goodfellas, yeah, I wasn't quite making a living. Now, I was when I was 23.
Hey, Spider, can I have some more bread? Hey, Spider, give me another vodka rocks.
Is that what they were doing? Happened. No, thank God. That would have been miserable.
That would have been horrible.
Yeah, that would have been horrible. But I did, I would go back and forth. I'd go off and do a movie. I had to go off, do a play, quit my restaurant job, do a movie, do a play, then come back. And it was back and forth till I was about 25 and then pretty much made a living.
Pay the bill. All right. So you go in, you read for David Chase. What's that like?
I worked really hard on the scenes. I did the scene when Christopher kills Emil Kolar. I think I read the scene with Pussy when we're trying to throw the body in the dumpster. And I don't remember what the other scene was. But I worked really hard. David has like a poker face. You can't really read him. Very kind of, doesn't give a lot away. So I thought I was kind of boring him because I really wasn't getting much of a reaction. And he would give me direction. I would do the scene. He said, can you do it a little more angry, a little less, whatever. And when you're auditioning, sometimes when people give you direction, sometimes you think as an actor, because you're so insecure, you're not getting it. You're not doing it right. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking this is not going too well, but I'm acting my ass off, trying really hard because I like the character a lot.
Yeah.
It's a really good character. And finally he said, thanks a lot. And that was it. And I walked out of the room convinced that I blew it, convinced that I bored him to tears and that I wasn't going to get it.
Yeah, well, I'd rather have that, a poker face, than some director, which we've all had. That was great. You're fantastic. Oh, my God. And then you get home and, your agent says.
That happens a lot.
Yeah, they love you. The minute that your agent tells you they loved you, you're dead.
They love you.
You're not your fucking dad. They loved you. You didn't get the job, All right, so you go home. You get the call back?
I get the call that they want to fly me to L.A. Test for the network.
To test.
Which is a big deal because they fly you first class. They put you up in a nice hotel. And then you're going to go do the audition scenes in they did it in a screening room in front of, a dozen executives.
The executives for HBO.
But in the waiting room.
Was David Chase there with you? Yeah.
He was, of course. But in the waiting room, there was me. I was the only one testing for Christopher, or Dean at the time. Edie, who was testing for Carmela, who I knew, like I said. Lorraine, who was testing for Melfi.
They made Lorraine Academy Award nominee. They made her read, huh? Test?
Well, I think at one time, they might have offered Lorraine Carmela. And she felt she kind of did that in Goodfellas.
Gotcha.
The mob wife. So maybe she suggested read me for Melfi. So maybe that was the issue. Then there were 3 guys reading for Tony Soprano. Mm-hmm. James Gandolfini, who I didn't know. Michael Rispoli, who plays Jackie Aprile, the boss. He's the boss at the time of the pilot, who I did know. I had done a movie with. We had done.
He works. If people see his face, they know. Michael's been in a lot of big stuff.
I had known him by then about 6 years. We did a movie called Household Saints with Vince D'Onofrio, Lily Taylor, Tracy Ullman, Vic Argo.
Terrific actor.
Great. And one other guy who I thought looked familiar, but I couldn't place his face. And then Sheila Jaffe, the casting director, came up to me and whispered, said, that's little Steven Van Zandt. But he was wearing the Silvio wig.
The Silvio wig. No bandana.
And then I realized who it was. And those 3 guys were auditioning they were the finalists for Tony Soprano.
So Michael Rispoli, Jim Gandolfini, Stevie Van Zandt could have been Tony Soprano.
Yeah, and I kind of thought, I'll be honest, I really thought Michael was going to get it because Michael's a great actor, and I was very familiar with his work, and I had worked with him. And Jim, I've only saw a little bit of his work in that play, and so I didn't really know. But Michael was a guy. He was doing a lot of pilots, like he was about to,
Yeah, but David must have obviously liked them all because they all wound up on the show.
They all wound up. They're all, very talented, obviously.
They all wound up on the show. That's funny. So you're sitting there. So with me, I came on the 2nd episode of the 2nd season. I auditioned in June 1999. Okay.
So did you like the show? Did you watch it a lot or what?
I didn't watch it a lot. I don't know why. I mean, I had watched it once I got the audition, then I really watched it. But listen, I was in Vegas. I didn't watch that much TV. I had seen it. It was okay. I know it was popular. A friend of mine really liked it. When I told him that I was going to read for it, he was all excited. I only auditioned one time in New York before, and that was for the Sammy the Bull movie.
Witness to the Mob.
That's the only other one.
Which I was in, and so was Sirico and Vinny Pastore. Kathy Narducci, who plays Charmaine Bucco in The Sopranos, played my wife.
Oh, wow.
I played Louis Melito, was Sammy the Bull's best friend. And
so that's the only, I read for that. I was living in Las Vegas. I'm from Brooklyn, but I was living here. I was back here for some reason. My agent, I got to read. I saw Vinny Pastore there. He was loud. He was Vinny. He was great. I could hear his audition through the wall. He got it. He got
That's
the
always
role.
terrible when you hear
Yeah, you can
because
hear
you
it.
know they're going to hear
Paper
yours. That's the problem. They know they're going to hear yours when you're in there, and it's
Well,
embarrassing.
the problem with that is you don't want to do what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you hear someone, then you figure, oh, you know, you get a little screwed up sometimes. So,
or you don't want to hear them be too good because that means they might beat you out.
So Vinny was there. I didn't meet him, but he was he was waiting out in the hallway. So that was the only other time I read it. I came to New York for a wedding. A buddy of mine was a writer on Saturday Night Live. And this is in, June of 99. And I come in and I had been working a little bit. I had a full-time job, entertainment director at the Riviera Hotel. I was booking acts. I had a little agency in Vegas.
What kind of acts were you booking?
Comics, mostly lounge acts, bands, the Beach Boys.
Big comedians, people we'd know, big comics.
Oh yeah. Everyone from Dennis Leary to Damon Wayans to Theo Ugly, Drew Carey, Kevin James, Joe Rogan, Ellen DeGeneres. We could go on and on. So, I came in. They faxed me. I stayed at the Vista Hotel at the World Trade Center. They faxed me the sides. I read for an FBI.
They flew you in or no?
No, I was here for a wedding.
You were on
just
your
by
own,
accident.
so it was your own dime. There was no way to
My own dime, just an accident. I just come in. I happen to be here. I have an agent helping me out, not even signed to, and I had done some stuff. I did a King of Queens. I did a Chicago Hope. I did little bit parts. I did Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Little shit. I had two
What did
lines.
you play in Fear and Loathing?
I played the doorman. When we threw Benicio del Toro and Johnny Depp out of the club.
So you worked with both of them?
I worked with both of them. And me and Benicio rolled around on the floor. I broke my watch. We were supposed to shoot it in Vegas. I get to the set. Terry Gilliam's the director. Get to the set. They said, we're not going to get to you. Next month in L.A. I go, yeah, sure, they're going to call me. Sure enough, they called me. We shot it at the Coconut Grove in L.A., where they killed Robert F. Kennedy. That's where we shot it. The Ambassador Hotel was still around. So I read for the role of Skip Lipari, FBI.
Oh, that was Louis Lombardi played that part.
Correct. So I go up there. The wedding's the next day. This is like a Friday afternoon. I worked on the stuff. They faxed me the sides. I was staying at the hotel. I was by myself. I go up there. Georgianne Walken's alone. There's no one in the office. It's just me. I read it. She goes, I don't see you as an FBI agent. I don't see it. Don't be nervous. You're nervous. It's just me and you, which relaxed me.
Were you nervous?
I was a little nervous. Listen, I was green, man. I was green. I worked on the stuff, but I was green.
Nerves are a big thing when you're starting out. Nerves are a big thing to conquer.
And I got to tell you, I'm forever indebted to Georgianne because
me too.
She calmed me down. She was alone. She just said, what are you worried? It's just me and you. I read, she said, I don't see you as an FBI agent. We have someone in mind, but read this. And she gives me cold read Bacala. So I read it. She said, that's not bad. She held up my resume. She said, what is this? I tell her, I got 2-3 lines here, there, blah, blah, blah.
Casino, right? You were in Casino.
I was in Casino. That's where I got my, If you really slow it down and turn the volume way up, you'll hear me yell, Joey, look out, look out. So, long story short, I come back. I wasn't going to come back. They call me. They say, we want you to read for David. I wasn't going to do it. My wife says, listen, you're only happy when you're doing this stuff. I was afraid I didn't want to spend the money. I got to go for, a hotel room, airfare. I went in. I went to Silver Cup. I read for David Chase. There was 15 people there. I worked very hard on the stuff. And the next morning they called me. And that was it. I mean, Georgianne called me. She said, I know I'm supposed to talk to your agent, but I got to tell you, you beat out over 100 people. You worked so hard. That was a good phone call. Good phone call. All right, let's get to the episode, brother.
So, before we get there, right before we shot the pilot, right? So I get the pilot. I also, at the same time, auditioned for Woody Allen. So I'd always wanted to work with Woody Allen, and I finally get an audition with him. He was very nice. It was for a movie, one of his not so great movies that probably nobody saw, called Celebrity.
I was in Wonder Wheel, which is probably the worst movie. So go ahead.
Well, this one was called Celebrity, and it was starred Leonardo DiCaprio. And I'd already worked with Leo on Basketball Diaries, and that sounded great. And my role would be to play one of his posse, and a lot of it took place in Atlantic City and all this stuff. So I get the part. And now my agent's got to work out, okay, you're doing this pilot, The Sopranos, which I accept, I took.
And the money was pretty good, I guess.
Yeah, and Woody Allen, not so good. But
Woody Allen's never good, but The Sopranos was good.
Well, yeah. For that time, for me, yes, very good.
Yeah.
So my agent's got to work out, the part in Woody Allen movie is not a big part, but it's a number of days. So what agents do when you have two jobs at the same time, they try to work out with the producers of both jobs. Sopranos was in first position, they call that. The other job has to work around that. They worked out everything except for one day. There was one day where both productions needed me on set. My agent said, you got to make a choice. Do you want to do the pilot? Do you want to do the pilot, or do you want to work with Woody Allen?
Boy. You made the right decision.
I took the pilot really because the role was great. Yeah. And the role I don't think I got the whole script from Woody Allen. He doesn't often do that for the little parts.
He just gives you your stuff.
And a lot of Woody's stuff is improvised, so there was not much on the page. So I decided to do The Sopranos, and Sam Rockwell did my role in the Woody Allen movie.
And I got to tell you, there's those moments in life when you make a decision.
Yeah.
And, I'll tell you real quick before we get into the episode here. Season 3, I became a series regular. I did 6 episodes the second season. Okay. I flew myself in. It cost me $24,000 to make $22,000. I was getting paid scale.
It cost what?
$24,000 out of my pocket. Luckily, I had money. I had a good job. I was making good money, man. I had a big house, 2 kids. I was 41 years old, 42 years old.
Plus, you're in Vegas. You had the town wired. You'd go out to dinner for free, shows, tickets,
everything.
All
There's
that
nothing
stuff.
I couldn't get. So when I finally get the chance to become a series regular, they offer me a third of the money that I'm making in Las Vegas. I mean, nothing. And I got 2 kids, like I said, and I want to move back to New York. And I get a call from David Chase because I auditioned for a Nick Totoro pilot. And David, who I spoke to one other time, I get on the phone and he said, Steve, it's David. I said, how you doing? He says, listen, we want you on the show. We'd love to have you. And I said, David, they're not offering me enough money, man. I can't do it for this money. He says, listen, nothing against Nick Totoro, but you got a chance to be on one of the greatest shows in TV history. I said, I need help. I can't go for this money. And it was a long weekend, man, and I was on pins and needles, and they came through with enough money to move my family and move me back here, and that's how I did it. Again, would have been a bad decision. Nothing against Nick. I love Nick Totoro, but to take his pilot would wind up not going. I tested for that, and I got that. It's just one of those things. You make a decision, you go left, you go right. Your whole life could change, as both of ours have.
Yeah, I mean, that's where luck comes in, because a lot of times people say, you got to be lucky to have it be a success, but it's like, you have to be good. They don't pick your name out of a hat to get a job.
But I
you
agree
have
that
the timing and
the
being
timing.
in the right...
Listen, if I don't come here for the wedding, seriously, if my buddy doesn't get married, I'm not here that weekend where they're casting this guy. They would have cast another bacala. I met it, never got on the show. So that's where luck comes.
Right, exactly.
Luck doesn't come in where I got lucky in the audition. I sucked, but I got lucky in the audition. The only words David Chase said to me in the audition, that was really good. That was it. I said, thank you for seeing me, and I walked out the door. You know, worst thing you can do in an audition is try to kiss the producer's ass, right? You know, like actors try to bring them, hey, I got regards from so-and-so. Hey.
You never did that? No.
No.
No, me
no
neither.
Regards. I don't know anybody. All right, let's do it.
I thought you said regot.
Yeah. No, regot. I had some regot the other night.
You bring regot to the producer to try to get the job. No, that didn't work either.
So episode 1. You shoot the pilot. You shoot the pilot in the summer of.
I think it was August 97.
97. You shoot the pilot. You want the job now. You want.
It was a lot of fun. It was really fun. We had a really good time. Like I said, I knew a lot of these people. You know what I mean? I knew Sirico. I think we did the same John Gallagher movie, Men Lie. I think we were both in that, but we had mutual friends and we knew each other. He was never very nice to me up until Sopranos.
I gotcha. Yeah, of course.
You know, he liked to.
Good guy. Tony's a great guy.
Well, after the pilot, we became like, you know, very, very, very close, tight friends. But up until then, I was a little reluctant because he sometimes would be, you know, he could stick the knife in and. He could be in
he had little wings. In the pilot, he's got little wings. And we're going to do a wing-o-meter. We're going to, as the 86 episodes go, I say we check on his wings.
And see how they evolved and progressed.
Yeah, because he had dark hair. Now, for you don't know out there, Tony has gray hair. He had gray hair. But he would go in Brooklyn to the barber called Three Brothers. And they would dye his hair jet black and then put the silver wings in. And if you look in the pilot, the wings are very small, you know.
Where, you know, that was a good choice, too. Where would that show be without the wings? That was,
the wings.
I mean, crucial.
Only him and Grandpa Munster, the only two people with that hairdo. It never caught on the rest of America.
Even when The Sopranos was a big hit, the kids weren't running around getting the wings put in, no?
And it wasn't like the Rachel on Friends, you know what I mean? Like that took over the storm, or the Elvis hairdo, you know.
Now you know Tony auditioned for Uncle Junior. Did you know that? Sirico.
Yeah, but he was only 55 at the time.
And I think Sirico.
Frank Vincent also.
Frank Vincent auditioned for Uncle Junior.
And Joe Vitarelli, Jelly from Analyze This.
I had met Dominic Chianese. I was friends and still am friends with Dominic's son, Dominic Jr., from way back when I was like 22. Both our girlfriends at the time worked together. And so I know him. Dominic was a comedian back then, Dominic Jr., so I knew his father through him. So I knew them too.
Dominic, one of the best guys you'll ever meet in your life. Dominic Chianese. Beautiful
and a
guy.
great, my favorite character on the show, Uncle Junior.
And mine was Tony Sirico.
Yeah.
Paulie Walnuts was my favorite character.
Dominic, who played Johnny Ola in The Godfather. And also played Al's father, Al Pacino's father in Dog Day Afternoon.
Oh, was it his father? Oh, yeah. I know him and Al are good friends. Yeah,
when they cut to Judith Malina, the great Judith Malina, who was in Household Saints, that movie that Rispoli and I did, founded the Living Theater. Her and Dominic played his parents. They're watching TV when the thing is going on, the bank robbery.
I got to look at that again. I knew he was in the movie. I didn't know where. So you shoot the pilot in September of 97. August of 97. When do you find out it's picked up?
Right before Christmas, and it was on the set. I was with Tony Sirico, who we had become very close friends by then, on the set of Witness to the Mob, the Sammy the Bull story, starring Nick
And you got
Turturro.
the call.
Yeah, my son Vadim had just been born. We were about to break for Christmas. We were going to come back and finish the movie. It was an NBC 2-part miniseries about Sammy the Bull that De Niro produced. And right before we broke for Christmas, they said, you got picked up. We're going to do a full season of The Sopranos.
Wow, that's a good call.
It was great because after we shot the pilot, I loved it. I mean, I had a really good time.
That's a good Christmas present. So then when do you go back to shooting again?
Not till, I think, June
Wow, it's a long
of
break.
98. Yeah.
A long break. Then you start shooting, and the show debuts, I believe it's 99, right?
January 99, yeah.
And David directed and wrote the pilot.
Yes.
David only directed 2 episodes, the first one and the last one.
That's right.
The pilot and the finale. I wasn't in either one of them. I never got him to. I always wanted to be in one of his episodes. I wasn't in either one of them. I had died in the episode before, but I don't know if I just blew it. Some people may not have got there yet. I'm sorry if I just blew it for you.
I think it's all good, Steve. They
So let
know
me ask
what's
you,
happening.
Do you think the show, very politically incorrect in so many ways, could it be made now? I mean, it holds up. It holds up very, very well. It's not dated.
Listen, I've noticed in the last year and a half, 2 years, a whole other generation has discovered this show. Kids in their 20s, late teens,
Sure,
their 30s who were babies.
My daughter is going through it the first time. She's 24.
I mean, and they find it very relevant and really relate to it. I think it's bigger now. I think it's more popular now. I think more people.
I think so too. I think because of the streaming services. Back then, only 11 million people had HBO. You know, that's it. Now you could see it a whole bunch of different ways. HBO Go and Amazon Prime and blah blah blah.
And that's why we're here doing this, because so many people
and it's all over the world.
And
it's all over the world. All over the world. I just wonder, I see some of the things in the first episode, some of the things Tony says, and I go, Uncle Junior says, I mean, would that fly?
Racial stuff.
Absolutely.
Like that,
a lot of racial stuff, Now, some people say it's an 86-hour movie. You think that's true?
Yes and no. You know what I mean? Yes and no.
You had to know what's going on. These episodes don't stand alone.
No, it's not like Seinfeld or
it doesn't stand alone.
It doesn't do that. Or Law and Order.
So I haven't seen the show. You haven't seen the show 20 years. I watched it the other night. For some reason in my head, I'm always thinking that the first scene is Tony getting the newspaper.
Which it's not.
I don't know what. No, absolutely not. He's in Melfi's office.
Yes.
Right? Cusimano, his next door neighbor, he went to, he had a panic attack. He wants to know why. Cusimano obviously tipped off Melfi that
he's a
gangster.
A mob
guy,
right?
Right? I mean,
probably.
No, I think for sure, because, she kind of tells him, Cusimano, not only is he your doctor, he's your next door neighbor. So she knows what she's getting into, and he's limited on what he can tell her. But obviously, Tony has problems, which I feel the audience relates so much to, because he's got problems with his kids, problems with his mother, problems with his wife, problems at work. Not unlike everybody else in America.
I think that's why the show, one of the reasons why the show really works so well. When I went back to watch the pilot, I wanted to make a conscious effort to say, okay, compare the first scene, the very beginning of the series, to the end, and see if you could connect the dot. Was there an arc? Was there some kind of through line? And it's really about family. His fears, which comes out later in the pilot, about he's going to lose his family.
Yeah.
And the ducks come as a couple, and then they have babies, and that, that kind of rocks his world and winds up with panic attacks and therapy and then on Prozac. And then at the very last scene, the Journey song, Don't Stop Believing, it's the family, and it's, they're coming together, they're going into the diner, there's a lot of tension, and then it goes to black. Did he keep the family together? Did he not? At that point, he did. So there really is, and when David wrote the pilot, did he have that in mind? I don't know.
Did he? Do you know that?
I don't know. I know he had the ending in mind quite a while before
Yeah.
A couple
I
of
knew that,
years.
but I don't know. But you don't know if he had
But
it.
it was interesting to see that connection between the very beginning and the very end, because it is there.
And the Ducks represent his family. I always wondered about
Yeah,
that. I just
yeah,
realized that. One thing about the show, and certainly with the pilot, you've got to watch the show more than one time. There's so many little things, so many subtle jokes, so many, like when he says, "Hey, I went to college for a year and a half. I know all about Freud."
right.
I mean, that is really funny, man.
It's very funny. Yeah.
There's so many funny things, and I don't know if everyone had always realized. People would come up to me as you. It's so violent, I don't watch it. Well, have you ever seen it? And how funny it is, and how smart it is. It's not just about killing. It's so much deeper, so much more.
No, and there's a lot of things that I'm trying to, as I go through it now again, figure out, like, can make subtle connections, unconscious, subconscious things, like the statue. He's staring at this statue of a nude woman
Yes.
in Melfi's waiting room, and the face, in a way. Later in the episode, you see a photograph of the young Livia, brilliantly played by Nancy Marchand. But
yeah.
the statue, in some ways, resembles the young Livia. So I don't know if he's making that connection, how intentional that was. Maybe it could be a younger Carmela, but there's something with him relating to a woman. Then he's going in to talk to a woman and reveal his innermost secrets. Very interesting moment.
Yeah.
And it could also just be a random statue. Who knows,
So now after he leaves Murphy's office, we see him back in his house. He's got a beautiful home, obviously a successful mob guy.
Well, it's interesting because he says to Melfi, he goes, my father, he feels like he's coming at the end of something.
Yes.
It's not the same anymore. He said, my dad had his people, his standards, his pride. What do we got? Well, he's got a giant mansion. He's got a giant
mansion, living very well, obviously, right off the bat. And then we see his kids in the house. We meet AJ for the first time, who is just turning 13.
Right.
Meadows in high school, played by the great Jamie Lynn Sigler and Robin Isla. And Hunter is David Chase's daughter in real
Hunter
life.
Scangarello is played by Michelle de Cesare. De Cesare is the real name of David Chase's family, although David didn't change his name to Chase. It was done, I think, by his grandfather. A few years before.
And then...
but the song that's playing when we introduce Edie is Shame, 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 right, by Shirley and Co., that disco hit. And I wonder... is that intentional? Is there a shame the way, just to say he's as she's as involved as he is in some ways?
Listen, I was on the show a long time. There's nothing unintentional.
There's no accident.
David knows exactly what he's doing.
And what is she saying? He's pointing the finger saying she's just as complicit.
You absolutely. Carmela's all in. She wants to put on a different face. But as we see throughout the whole series, Carmela is all in. She denigrates what he does for a living, himself, but she reaps all the rewards.
She likes the power.
The power and the money and the cars,
the status,
and the house.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
You think also there's something interesting that it's Anthony's 13th birthday, and 13, like Italians, you have your confirmation. In Jewish culture, they have their bar mitzvah. It's kind of a very thing about adulthood. Does that relate to the Ducks? Does that relate to, Tony feeling like, the birds are going to fly away, whatever. All that stuff I think is really brilliantly tied together.
Oh, the pilot is brilliant. And hopefully one of these days, David will come on and we can ask him all these questions.
David,
I hope so.
I'm sure he will come on.
I hope so that he'll come on our podcast. He'll answer all these things for us. Okay, so then we see you for the first time. You're driving Tony. You're what, 31 years old?
31 years old, yeah. Wearing a baseball hat, which we got rid of the hats. I personally, Michael has never been a hat guy. I didn't like wearing a baseball hat.
Oh,
But
okay.
it was
Well,
something
you're a
I think
Yankee fan. You're a Yankee fan.
I'll wear a hat at a Yankee game, but I'm not in real life. I'm not, in normal life. But it was kind of important, I think.
Is it a normal life, my friend? Is it really a normal life?
Does anybody have a normal life? But Christopher, I modeled on a guy I know.
Oh, really?
Who does not know that I did that, and will never know, and nobody knows who I modeled him on. But it was a guy who was involved a little bit with the mob in New York, and had some aspirations to be in show business, but that didn't really happen. But there was something in his personality that was almost larger than life. I mean, Christopher really, and nothing's very subtle with him, it's everything's high drama, everything's, and this guy was like that, to the point sometimes I'd watch him behave and it almost didn't seem real in a weird way. And
well, somewhat Christopher does and says doesn't seem real. He's not the brightest. He's not the brightest guy.
He's not the brightest guy, but he is very ambitious, and
he wants to please Tony,
and works willing to do the work.
He wants to please Tony.
Although in the pilot he's very immature, and he's very very quickly he does change, because you see him, he's lazy, overslept, he didn't make the call, and that went away pretty quick, and he did start to really show up for
when
the
he
job.
says, "My mother said I shouldn't even have came in today."
Yeah, he was nauseous, and he was
another great. See, that is comedy, man. You guy, you're a mob guy. Your mother said you shouldn't have came in because you don't feel good. All right, so we go to. You guys are driving. Tony's asking you, "Did you do this? You do that?" You're giving him all this.
I didn't do any of it.
And then you run into the guy. You guys spot. You're driving now.
Now that's a whole thing in itself, because I lived in New York my whole life. I didn't have a driver's license.
Did you ever drive? Because it looks like you know what you're doing.
Not really. So, but I didn't tell anybody that. They just assumed you're 31 years old, you have a driver's license. I wanted the job. I didn't say anything. So,
but when you get the script, you must have that you were going to have to drive.
I don't know. I figure I could wing it.
Yeah.
But I don't remember exactly what happened, because at some point I'm driving the car backwards down the sidewalk with Jim next to me, with extras getting out of the way, trees on both sides.
And you don't know Jim. This is your first scene with him.
I think it was my first day.
Wow.
And I'm doing it. I'm driving backwards, and I have to look at a mark in front of me while going backwards, talking. I mean, even if you know how to drive, that's a lot to do.
Yeah.
And I did it like 4 or 5 times. And finally, the director says, go AD, not the director. I think it was Henry was the AD, if I'm not mistaken.
Henry Bronstein, who directed episodes.
Wound up directing. Go twice as far and twice as fast. So I go twice as far, twice as fast. Boom, right into a tree. Really hard. The airbags go off. Jim's, head goes back. And I'm thinking, I'm done. They're going to fire me. This guy's the star of the show. He must think I'm an asshole. And horrified. I mean, you're still vulnerable. It's your first day. It's a big deal. It's a series. I was mortified and really.
Imagine after all that work, you're saying, "This is how I'm going to fuck a bloated job."
So and then I look at Jim, and he just starts hysterically laughing. And then I'm like, all right, he's a good guy.
Jim always liked when shit went awry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, when shit went. He always loved that, like you know what I mean? When shit was, he found humor in that.
Right. When the wheels fell off, he was always he thought it was funny.
Absolutely. All right.
So then they the prop woman, a woman named Barbara Kastner, who was a very tough New Yorker, you know, she's furious at me.
Prop woman.
And then she finds out I don't have a license, and now she's really pissed off. She wants to file a thing, and I'm like, oh my God. But they bring over another Lexus. They had another one, I guess they were going to use to put on the rig on the flatbed truck when we were driving around. And they bring it over. They go, all right, do it again.
They didn't give a shit.
I did it again. But she thought I was amateur, and she was really.
But in the meantime, that was the only episode she ever did, correct?
I think so. And I think she did the Sammy the Bull movie, but we wound up becoming friends after this. But she was really pissed off.
Well, probably because
rightfully so.
She was probably going to take heat because you didn't have a license.
Yeah.
But you got a license now.
Oh, well, then they said if we come back, you got to get a license if the show gets picked up.
So
but what was interesting, it got cut out of the eventual, edit was Mahaffey, played by Michael Gaston, who's a character actor, did a lot of work. He was
so that's the guy who he owes you guys money.
Who Tony beats up. And
he kicks you. He kicks Christopher in the balls. Christopher goes down. Tony takes it upon himself, and he's enjoying every moment of chasing.
Well, they're playing Dion. Yeah, he's having a good time, which is actually very sick. He's happy, laughing. Dion's playing, and they're going to beat the shit out of, break this guy's leg and cripple him. But he's walking with his girlfriend, a girl, and I say that's him next to the boo-boo in pink. She's wearing a pink skirt. At the end of the scene, her and I make eye contact, and she's kind of turned on. And then
she's wearing a short skirt. She's wearing a
pink skirt.
They go to her leg, yeah.
And that got cut out, that moment between us, because we look at each other. There's like a sexual chemistry. And then in a later scene, when I call Tony and I'm watching the news, and I said, little pussy is out of jail. Yeah. She's in bed with me.
That's her. But they don't make that clear.
They don't make it clear that we had a connection there. I think it was too much.
After Tony clips the guy and he's down on the floor and he's punching him and he's giving him a beating, you're worried more about your bumper.
Oh, it's a brand new Lexus. He's pissed off, of course. It's $3,000 Fender.
And then he's telling you, get in there. So you got to do part of the work.
I got to get in there, yeah, of course.
Okay. Let's see. You beat up the businessman. Then let's see what happens. All right. There's a meeting. We finally see all the guys, right? We see.
Yeah, and Silvio, interestingly enough.
We see Paulie. We see Big Pussy.
Me and Jim.
We see you, Silvio, and Tony Soprano.
But Silvio comes over, and they're like, what are you doing here? He goes, oh, Gabriella sends me for the gabagool. So he, in the pilot, was not really part of the crew yet. He was more of an associate. He wasn't consigliere.
He owned the Bada Bing.
Right. And then when we were in the Bada Bing later in the episode, he says, oh, these guys drink for free.
That's right. So, at which the Bada Bing, let's just get this out of the way, it was called Satin Dolls in Lodi, and it was not topless. New Jersey doesn't allow topless with alcohol. It was a bikini bar.
And it had a different name in the pilot. They changed it before we shot it, but in the first script, it was called The Final Lap.
Oh, look at that. Also, the pork store called Santani's, not Satrielli's.
And it was changed to Satrielli. Yeah.
And that was just a set. People, I know all through the years, people went there thinking it was a real pork store. That was just a set. That was in Kearney, New Jersey.
Yeah, correct? It's a parking lot now. It doesn't exist anymore.
They knocked it down. But in the pilot, it's Santani's. And in the rest of the way, it's Satrielli's. Okay? Go to Artie Bucco's restaurant, which is Vesuvio, which later becomes the set. On set, just like the Soprano house is built on the set, Silver Cup, which was...
The pilot was all locations. Yeah.
Correct. But the people don't know, Silver Cup was once a bread factory for many years, closed down in Long Island City, right across the 59th Street Bridge here. And it becomes a studio. And the sets are built there. The Soprano house, the inside, which was a huge set. Because you have upstairs, downstairs, and slowly Junior's apartment and Livia's apartment. It's all eventually built on the set for all them years. So we always went to do the exteriors.
Well, we did the barbecues in the backyard and the front yard stuff. The guy who actually owned it at the time was the architect who designed that house and a bunch of the houses in the cul-de-sac. And I think at one time he was selling the architectural plans.
The blueprint.
You could buy the plans and build your own
Whenever you went
house.
there, all through the series, they would have a cocktail party. Had his friends over.
While we were shooting, they were great, really nice people.
He would have a party, nice people, and they became kind of
the Riccios, right? Was that their name? Riccio, I think.
I don't know, but they became local celebrities in their own right, you know. Tony, the panic attacks. What do you think? What do you think that's about?
Well, I mean, I think it's about his fears that he, listen, when you're a mob guy, obviously you live with fear that A, you could be arrested, Rico puts you away for 30 years, or you could be killed, or your family could be killed. It's like, don't tell me they don't think about those things. Or play by those things.
Tony at the time is in his late 30s. I mean,
Tony's in his late 30s, so he's all in. He's done some, to get where he is. He's done some heavy shit. Obviously, who knows? Yeah. How is that working on his conscience? Now
they want to kill little pussy Malanga.
He's coming out of jail. Yeah.
So Tony knows Artie all his life. They went to elementary school together. Artie's not a mobster. He's played by the great John Ventimiglia, who you went to acting school with.
I know John since I'm 17. We met at Lee Strasberg, and we had done a ton of stuff. We had a theater company. We did a lot of theater together. We did a lot of indie movies. Before The Sopranos, we were roommates. When I was 20, we had an apartment on 11th between B and C in 1986. Very dangerous neighborhood at that time.
But look at all the people in the, of all the actors, and there's thousands of them. I mean, you two are friends. You go to, acting school together, and you wind up on the same show. I mean, that's like hitting the lottery, man.
But Sharon Angela, who plays Rosalie April, who we'll meet later, she also was I met her in acting school. Well, it really was Sheila and Georgianne, the casting people, because, listen, the Italian-American community is not a huge one in New York.
I know, but you wind up as series regulars.
No, it's kind of amazing.
I mean, that's pretty amazing. And, we're all still good friends. John's done a ton of work. We talked about Tony Sirico, Paulie Walnuts. He started a little late, did a bunch of movies, bunch of Woody Allen movies. Vinny Pastor started acting late. I think in his 40s. Did a lot of work. You got Dominic, Stevie Van Zandt. This is his first acting job. Does a fantastic job.
I don't think there was a Silvio Dante in the original pilot script. I think Silvio Dante was a character that Stevie had written about or written for him for some kind of screenplay or something.
David was watching the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Stevie did that, I guess, the Pacino impression.
He did the induction ceremony for the Rascals.
And I think he did the impression. Them. He did that impression. Is that correct?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Maybe. I think that he might have done the pull me back in, the Pacino thing. David happened to see that. Stevie at the time was not in the E Street Band. He had done the Sun City album.
He had left the East Street.
He had left. He really hadn't done anything for 7-8 years. I don't think he had an agent.
He had a lot of, still does, a lot of charisma. I mean, he's a very, fascinating
Here's a guy who was one of the leads in one of the greatest shows in TV history and one of the greatest bands in TV history.
Yeah, pretty cool.
That is pretty amazing.
So I guess, David loved what he did. Didn't think he was right for Tony Soprano, but wanted to find a way to make it work and have him on the show.
So, Father Phil, which we see this Father Phil, and then later on it becomes another Father Phil that we see a lot more. But
yeah, Michael Santoro is in the pilot, and then it became Paul Schultz, who Edie Falco really first was known for a little indie movie called Laws of Gravity, directed by Nick Gomez, who also directed in our first season of Sopranos.
Yeah.
Which is a great little indie, made for no money, in the early 90s, I believe. And it was Peter Green, Adam Tracy, and Edie, Paul Schultz. I think it was Arabella Field as well. But so Edie and Paul, they go back a long time. Paul's a great actor, done a lot of really good work.
Great. And a great guy.
I don't know when that transition happened or why. I'm not.
Yeah, but maybe he wasn't available. It was a long break between the pilot and the second episode. That's a long break, man.
The scene when Tony goes in the MRI machine.
Yes, great scene.
He really looks afraid.
Oh, sure. He
really
is afraid, but she has just terrible, like he tells her, bedside manner. I mean, he's going to hell. She's not. I think she thinks being friendly with the priest and going to church and whatever she winds up doing, as we see all along the way, she thinks that wipes her clean of the dirty deeds. You know what I mean? Right. She's reaping the rewards of what Tony is doing, but because she's with the priest and he's at the house and they're eating popcorn and watching movies, that it's all okay.
Yeah, she does, and it adds for a lot of interesting tension throughout the whole series. I think that aspect.
And you see her with the doesn't she have the soup can? She opens up. There's all the money in the soup can.
Right, and the AK. What does she have? An AK-47. She has.
Correct. Meadow is sneaking out of the house, which is a really funny scene. She's with the priest. Watching a movie, she hears something, comes outside with an AK-47. It's her daughter, and sneaking out.
They're talking about Godfather 2, and then he asks her, "Where does Tony rank Goodfellas?" And right before she answers, she hears.
And David was a big Goodfellas fan. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. I think he said it himself. There probably wouldn't be Sopranos if there wasn't Goodfellas.
And there was a whole lot of Goodfellas actors on The Sopranos.
Throughout the years, of course.
A whole lot. But so Carmela, and then she wants to take Meadow to the plaza, the Eloise, from the book Eloise at the plaza. They want to have lunch. And, of course, Meadow's going through her phase of what teenage girls go through, take it out on their moms. But she goes to that soup can, and she gets the roll of money in order to have a nice day. So she doesn't like what Tony does, but yet she'll spend the money.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, she's in. She's all in. Just like he is in some ways.
Tony wants so they want to kill Pussy Malanga in Artie Bucco's restaurant. Tony wants to help him because he thinks the restaurant. Little does Tony know that, like Sparks, it might have made the rest. And Sparks at Umberto's Clam House, where they killed Joey Gallo,
and Paul Castellano,
they did more business than ever after the killing.
They became notorious and famous, and people wanted to go there because it added. And Rayos, remember Rayos had a.
They had a guy kill him not that long ago. There's a guy killed somebody there, so people wanted to go in. So he wants to get Hesh, always the voice of reason, played by the great Jerry Adler. Hesh is always, unofficial consigliere to Tony. Always giving him advice. He worked for his father. Hesh is always the voice of reason. He says, why don't we just get Artie out of town so they can't do the hit at the restaurant? The restaurant will be closed. And, of course, Tony offers him tickets to go on a cruise.
But what's interesting is Tony has the idea to do the HMO scam with Hesh.
Correct.
See, Tony now is in... This is part of what's happening with the therapy. His relationship with Carmela starts to get better. Excuse me, I'm a little sick. That's why I sound like this, just to let you know. He connects with Meadow when he goes to the church and says, your grandfather built this. He's also, the idea about doing the HMO thing so he feels like he thinks it's the Prozac. She tells him Prozac has not built up
Hasn't kicked in
significant
yet.
levels in your blood, but maybe it's a therapy. It's kind of, he's thinking clearer. The idea to do the HMOs, Hesh looks at him and says, that's a really good idea. It's a funny scene when he goes to offer the tickets. He offers to send Artie Bucco on a cruise.
Yeah.
And I think it's Johnny improvising right at the top of that scene, which was very little improv on The Sopranos. But Johnny's like, all right, give me a little bit. I said a drop, not a spurt, which is classic Johnny V.
Yeah.
Improvisation stuff.
I saw some improv in the pilot. After that, there was next to none.
Never.
The other 85 episodes.
Never.
Once where Jim says, "How's your rash?"
How's your rash? Yeah. And Johnny says, "Dishy." And we would say that to each other for years after that on the set. How's your rash? Hey, how's your balls, or how's your rash? Jim, especially. Love to say those. But you could see Johnny plays Artie brilliantly, because he likes Tony a lot, but he's nervous around him. You could see it's very, and his wife does not like Tony, does not like mobsters being in there.
She wants nothing to do with it. Charmaine wants nothing to do with any of this stuff.
And interestingly,
she wants to run a clean business.
She wants a clean business. She resents having them there. But after we shot the pilot, before it got picked up, before a network decides to, go with a series, they'll test it with an audience. Charmaine was one of the highest testing characters out of all of them.
Wow.
Because people liked the fact that she was kind of against the mob, opposed to the mob. But
amazing. But yet,
ultimately, fans wind up liking the mob, or liking those characters.
Absolutely.
And liking Charmaine, too. I think Kathy, Narducci did an incredible job as in that character. Very, very great acting.
So he can't get Artie to go out of town. So what happens? They burn the restaurant down. It's kind of like they're doing it for his own good, but yet they took the guy's livelihood away. It really makes no sense when you think about it. There had to be a better way to do this than to burn the guy's restaurant down and ruin his business, what they were trying to avoid in the first place. It's exactly what they did, So Artie doesn't take it well, obviously. They're at the barbecue. And then Junior and Livia in the car. Junior tells Livia he's starting to hint something needs to be done about Tony. He's looking for Livia to kind of give him the okay. To kill Tony?
Seems like
maybe.
It. I mean, it seems like it.
Seems like to me.
I mean, the character of Livia, the name, I'm pretty sure David said this. There was a series called I, Claudius that was on PBS. Yeah. I think BBC originally, back in the 70s, about the Roman, the Roman emperors. And Livia was the wife of Augustus. And she was a treacherous. She was played by an actress, Sean Phillips, who was married to Peter O'Toole at one time, but who I almost did a movie with, Sean Phillips. I had some meetings with her. She's a tremendous actress. But this character of Livia in I, Claudius was the most treacherous, pitting one family member against the other, and just a real viper, So he named the mother character, Livia. I mean, it was very intentional.
Now, was Livia written about David's mom?
Well, inspired by. And I mean, David says his mother was a prickly character. I mean, she was, David was born and spent his first few years in Mount Vernon, New York, which is where I grew up. We were actually, David and I were born in the same hospital, Mount Vernon Hospital. And David, I think they lived in a house where the ground floor was a doctor's office. And there were always sick people coming in and out all the time. And he saw this as a kid. And I don't know if his mother was involved there or something, but it was, he had a very
I got to tell
strange
you,
relationship.
I mean, Nancy Marchand, who most famous for Lou Grant, won numerous Emmys, I believe. An incredible actress and a stage actress. I mean, Livia, there's not one nice thing you could say. Really,
Wow, she is just when Edie goes over there and brings her food, and she's just miserable. And
miserable, tough.
Tony brings her the CD player.
There's nothing you could do right. Even when she gives him the eggplant, you never liked my food. Even when he doesn't eat it. Then when he eats the Virginia hair, he doesn't eat enough. It's always something. Always something. Okay,
and not Italian. You know, if you think about it, David really, I think, liked hiring Italians to play Italian. And he auditioned a lot of actresses who were. Yeah. And nobody quite got it right.
Well, most of the cast, and I've always said this, most of us came, whether David did it on purpose or subconsciously, we come from the same backgrounds. It's middle class, lower middle class, mostly from New York and New Jersey. Kind of all, you know what I mean? Italian Americans, or at least half. Almost everybody was came from the same area. You know what I mean? He wasn't hired. There wasn't L.A. blonde hair surfer guys trying to play a mob guy, you know, like you see some shows or some movies, you know. Okay, so.
Oh, little detail, interesting. When Tony takes his first gourmand to the restaurant where he sees Melfi, Dre DiMatteo is the hostess.
Correct.
And I don't know if I'm not sure if she was Adriana at the time or she was just hired to be the hostess there or what. But I didn't meet her then. I didn't know her.
And then she, from the second episode on, she
was Adriana, yeah.
Her role gets bigger and she becomes your girlfriend.
People are smoking in the restaurant, which very soon after that went away, yeah.
Well, another thing, everybody, a lot of the cast smoked.
I did. Stevie Van Zandt did. Sirico did.
You know, a lot of the cast smoked cigarettes.
You know, interestingly enough, Jim, some nights, he wasn't a smoker. But sometimes to get into a scene, he'd ask for unfiltered Lucky Strikes, and he'd smoke one. That's what his father, Jim's father, used to smoke those. So I don't know what connection he was making or how that got him into it, but sometimes he'd smoke one.
You know,
not on camera.
There's also Jim used to like to, like he would say to me, hey, let's go down a little, before the season started, he would say, let's go down a little Italy. Let's have dinner. You know, I want to be around some guys. And he did that with a lot of his roles. When he played a cop, he used to go on drive-throughs with cops or detectives. And he wanted to be around wise guys and guys that talked the way Tony Soprano talked and the guys talked. And he used to do that a lot. He would say, let's go down there, let's have dinner and kind of hang, and, you know, so he could get back into it, especially when we had those long breaks between seasons.
Right.
And then, so at the end, the family's together. They're having the party, you know, AJ's party. Livia's over. She's got to give a smart remark. She doesn't like the mesquite. It makes the sausages taste bad. That's what I'm saying. So many little things that you find. And then the show goes out with.
Well, then he talks to me. I reveal, this is interesting because I say, my cousin said that I could sell my story to Hollywood.
That's right.
And I could play myself. So that was already there, you know.
And he gets up and grabs you. Was that in the script?
I don't think so.
Grabbing you by the collar? I don't think so. You know, he grabbed you by the collar, and then he says, "You think I haven't gotten offers?" I don't think he got offers.
Which is interesting. Yeah, he's just saying that to just brush it off, and then he says, "We're going to do good things. Things are good now." You know, get that out of your head. But
Christopher's very ambitious.
Very ambitious, yeah. I also love that song that they end on. That's "The Beast in Me" by Nick Lowe. Nick Lowe did that famous song "Cruel to Be Kind." He also produced for a lot of people, including Elvis Costello, and wrote that great song that Elvis Costello recorded, "What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding." Nick Lowe wrote that song.
Now all the music, as I understand, was all well. David is a big music fan,
Big music fan, yeah,
and all these songs.
and I think Stevie had something to do with it. I think the song when Christopher shoots Emil Kolar, they use Bo Diddley's "I'm a Man." I think that might have been Stevie's.
And that's another thing I like. You kept, and this was early on. His name's Emil, and you keep calling him Email.
Right.
Christopher's calling him Email, which email was fairly new then.
Very new. But it was I think, a good idea of Christopher's. To have this guy, I mean, it really worked.
I want to ask you this. Christopher was doing some karate moves. Did you improv that?
That was in the script.
It was in the script.
It just said Christopher does a kung fu dance. I remember that.
Did you know it then? I know you know some shit now.
I just messed around then.
All right, man. That was fantastic. I hope you people out there enjoyed that. I mean, I learned a hell of a lot. I'll tell you that. I hope you did. Let's ask some question here, man.
Yeah, every show we're going to do an Ask Me Anything segment. If you go onto our website, you can submit a question. And this episode of Talking Sopranos is sponsored by Bose. The Ask Me Anything segment is sponsored by Bose as well. Now, you can experience immersive audio anywhere. The Bose noise-canceling headphone 700. Today's question is from Reynolds. And we're going to send
Reynolds is going to get a Bose 700 headset.
He's going to we're going to send him a pair of Bose headphones 700. Absolutely. And and you can learn more about the headsets on Bose.com. But we went through some questions, and this one really jumped out at me. I really like this.
Yeah, but just so the people know, you go to TalkingSopranos.com, you submit your questions. Every show, we're going to give away one of these Bose headsets. Yeah. So you follow us also on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and TalkingSopranos.com. You submit your question. Every show, we're going to give away a Bose 700 headset.
If it's a good question. You got to ask a good question, though.
Well, yeah. Well, we're going to pick the best question that we feel.
Yeah, but if there's not a good question, we won't pick.
Yeah, well, don't ask us.
Don't ask us whatever you want, but,
Don't ask us about the ending. No, not yet, anyway.
You can ask. Well, this question from Reynolds, is Tony Soprano a hero or a villain? It's a good question.
I think he's both. I don't know about a hero. Takes care of his family. I think this is what, in a nutshell, this is what made the show. I think Tony Soprano was the first character, the first lead character to be a bad guy. He did bad things, not just to bad people, to regular schmoes, regular civilians. He did some bad stuff, yet the audience choose to root for him. He's a murderer. He's a drug dealer. He's a thief. He cheats on his wife. He hits all the sins. But yet, for whatever reason, the audience likes him. And he is certainly a villain. Absolutely. But yet, and I think that's what the magic is. And I don't know what that magic is, but that's what makes the show incredible.
Yeah, the tension between those two things. The fact that you can root for him, see him struggling to somehow try to be a good guy in his mind, going to therapy and sorting all that out and trying to do the right thing and trying to take care of his family.
He loves animals. He's worried about the kids. And then he's punching the guy in his balls.
Yeah, and he's extremely selfish and greedy, and let's not kid ourselves. Right?
Well, that's what that world is all about. I mean, and that's why Artie is reluctant when you say he's afraid of him, because usually you're that close to someone, it usually backfires.
Yeah, he's built up a good business, and he's afraid, at some point someone might step in and say, hey, we want in. And how is that going to change things? But that's a great question. I think that's something we're going to explore. I know we will a lot. This question is going to come up a lot during the course of us exploring the episodes.
Well, I think, yes, the show was about the mob, but I think it was about family. I I mean, Tony Soprano could have been a plumber. He would have had the same problems. I mean, maybe plumbers don't go around murdering people, but
but he might sin, but he commits sin. Everybody sins.
And I think it's also
perfect.
the first time you see these guys, not just in a club. You see them. You see him with his family, his wife, his mother. They don't give a shit who he is, how powerful he is. His kids don't care. They don't care.
Most mob stories don't before the Sopranos hadn't gone into those things.
They're always mobsters. You don't see them at home, eating ice cream or whatever he's doing, So that was a really good question, Reynolds. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank Bose for sponsoring us. That's fantastic. Don't forget, go to TalkingSopranos.com. Thanks for listening. Remember to subscribe to the Talking Sopranos podcast wherever you get your podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram and like us on Facebook.
Our executive producer is Jeff Sussman. Producers Andy Verderam. Our music theme song is called Long Way to Now. That's provided by Community Room. And our production crew includes Eric Desi, Bobby Hutch, Frank McCaw, and Ty Verderam. Talking Sopranos is a Pod Jams production.
Thank you, man. Thanks for listening. We're going to see you soon. Tune in.